Hi, I'm Michael Senoff, founder and CEO of HardToFindSeminars.com. For the last 5 years, I've interviewed the world's best business and marketing minds. Along the way, I've created a successful publishing business, all from home, from my two-car garage. When my first child was born, he was very sick, and it was then that I knew I had to have a business that I could operate from home. Now my challenge is to build the world's largest free resource for online downloadable MP3 audio business interviews. I knew I needed a site that contained strategies, solutions, and inside angles to help you live better, to save and make more money, to stay healthier, and to get more out of life. I've learned a lot in the last 5 years, and today I'm going to show you the skills you need to survive.
If you're not aware of personality management, if you're not aware of the incredible change it can make in a business, and that's not just a pie-in-the-sky, blue-sky claim, personality management is essential. If they're not acquainted with it, test out our program and see if they become a believer real quick, because literally they could purchase the most expensive package we've got, which is the PEP Advanced package, $495, and pay for that program 5 times over in the very first employee that they keep from leaving their employment. Now, when you're looking at figures like that, you can't hardly lose by using the program. And the harmony of the business, once this program is used and installed and used on a regular basis, businesses tell me their harmony increases. One business had their turnover, had it dropped by 50% in the first year. Even in the home, there was one couple, one particular thing that really I appreciated over the years. This is probably my favorite example of PEP being an assistant. A man wrote me, and he hadn't even purchased a registered version. He had just used the freeware version. He said, I've been married to the same woman for 30, 35 years. I forget exactly how long. He said, I didn't realize that I didn't know who she was. We both took the PEP evaluation, and I realized for the first time who she actually was. Says, we were thinking of getting a divorce.
Where are you originally from?
Well, I was born in California. It's called Fairfield, but I've lived here in Missouri most of my life.
What led you to True Software in the personality profiling?
When I went to college, I actually started out to be an art teacher. And about 2 years into college, the state decided to start cutting school funding. And, of course, when that happens, the first thing to go is art and music. So I realized quickly there was no future in that. And at the time, I had taken a math class. This was back in 1977. And one small, tiny part of that math class introduced computers.
Okay.
Well, that was the day when home computers didn't quite exist yet. I think the only home computer on the market was the Commodore PET and the very earliest of the Apples. And people didn't really know much about them. There weren't any computer stores. You couldn't go down and find a computer magazine on the rack. But that one little section piqued my interest, and it came just about the time when I was trying to figure a new career to go into. So I decided to go into computers. I thought there would be a future in it.
How old were you then?
I was 22.
And you were in college at that time?
Yeah, I was in college.
What was your first job out of college?
Well, I actually started working while I was still in college. By then, the computers were starting to get known. The first of the Radio Shack models were on the market. And a new computer store had opened up, and they were looking for someone to teach their corporate computer classes.
Wow.
And by that time, I had pretty much taught myself computers. The things I had learned in college were just totally out of date because the whole market had changed. I had bought myself a home computer by that time. I'd taught myself computer programming and had already written a few programs, and so they hired me to teach their corporate classes.
And then what happened after that?
Well, over a period of time, I started working more in my own direction. In 1985, I came across the basis of what later came to be my personality evaluation packages. By that time, I had 3. I was one of those people, instead of just taking college, right out of high school, I went on to the work sector to start with, and then 4 years later went back to college and continued in college for several years. So by the time I was done, I had 3 majors, one in psychology, one in computers, and one in business management. So all those things together culminated in 1985 to me developing the first of my personality evaluation programs.
Well, what gave you the idea?
Well, without giving away my trade secrets, what actually happened is that I came across a psychology database that was several years old, but it was amazingly accurate. I mean, it was one of those things that would just blow you away. It was done by hand at the time on a sheet of paper, and used a method that was kind of quirky. I looked at this system, and I started asking people about it, and come to find out, nobody had been able to computerize it. It was such a strange method of evaluating personalities in psychology that nobody could computerize the thing.
So it was a manual one. It wasn't computerized. It was a personality profiler, but on paper.
Right.
Was it used for anything specific at that time?
Well, at the time, it was basically used in the corporate sector on a very limited basis. I was introduced to it, in fact, from a person who worked in the HR field. And as I looked at it, I've always had a knack for being able to see things that people in general don't see, which is why I work well in the business consulting area.
Right.
And as I looked at this, patterns started to form, and I started seeing things about it, and over a period of time, I figured out how to computerize it. And so I computerized it. I altered some things to it and made some updates because, of course, like I said, it was several years old, so there were some things that were out of date, and there were ways to make it work better in the computer field. So as time progressed, I honed and refined it and added new information and updated it according to modern psychology and societal methods, and wound up with what I've got today.
At that time, in your mind, were you thinking that this would become the business that it's become for you, or were you more interested in it as a project and a challenge?
When I first got into computers, there wasn't anything available to explain how computers work. And if you talked with a programmer or with a technician, they didn't know how to speak English.
I agree.
So the motto of my company right from the start was, I speak plain English.
That's great.
Whenever I wrote a computer program, it was designed to be easy to use above all, very easy to understand, simple to figure out. The use of the program would be very user-friendly. It would be easy to figure out how to make the program work, all menuized, and understand back then that was not a popular thought among programmers.
Right.
So I took the tech out of my programs and put in instead common business sense. When I first started in the personality area, I used this same approach. At the time, of course, there were other personality evaluation packages on the market. There were other psychology packages, but most of them were very lengthy to use. They were very complex to use. They were hard to figure out. They produced questionable results. And so from the very start, because of the way my business was already set up, I was determined to overcome those problems.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We'll get into this a little later. I took it and I compared it to some other things out there, and then by far, with your one-word descriptions or adjectives, it is very easy to use and very quick, and people wouldn't hesitate doing it. I think that is a key to your success.
I'm glad to hear you say that. You're kind of echoing what most of my clients say, too, and that's been consistently the case ever since I produced the program. So as long as people tell me that, I know I'm on the right track.
How long has Drew Software been in business?
I've initially opened the business in 1985, which was, back when Windows was just in infancy stage, just getting started. DOS was still very strong. I had a few computer programs that I'd written, and I thought they would be of interest to the public, so I opened up the business.
Okay, and what exactly is a personal evaluation program?
Well, it's kind of what the name says. It's a computer program which is designed to accurately evaluate a person's natural personality. The way mine basically works is that people fill out a form which contains 40 terms. I think you've seen this form already and tried it out.
Right.
And they respond to each of those terms as to whether that term applies to them as a person or whether it doesn't apply to varying degrees. And then when they're through, they feed the information in the computer, and the computer produces a 5-page report which typically nails them on the head as far as who they are.
Why is personality evaluation valued in a business environment?
Every job that a business may have open or available has a personality that works best with that job. Now, it's kind of a blatant example. If you've got a bookkeeping job open where a person's going to be sitting behind a desk 8 hours a day, the last person in the world you'd want to put in that job is an outgoing go-getter, a mover and a shaker, who likes people, who likes changes in environment, who likes to be on the move all the time, if you were to set that person behind a desk, not only would he not do the job well, but it would demotivate him to the point that he'd eventually leave the job. He just couldn't stand to be there. And on the same basis, you wouldn't want to put a quiet, conservative person who loves to work with numbers out in the field talking to people all day long. That would drive them crazy. So since every job has an ideal personality that would fill that job, the idea is to find out what personality that specific job requires, and then also what personality your applicants and employees have, so you can match the two together. When you get a good match, then you significantly reduce employee turnover. You wind up with more motivated employees who are more productive. You reduce your absenteeism. You reduce your health and stress-related problems. It's a win-win situation all the way around. So that's where my program comes in. It helps an employer to identify both the requirements of the job and the personality of the people that they want to fill that job.
From your experience in the marketplace, out of 1,000 companies, small businesses or medium-sized businesses, how many of them even know about this and are even using it? Do you know?
I'm finding that over the years, more and more businesses are becoming aware of personality management as a concept. But as far as the general marketplace goes, I would say the vast majority of the businesses are still unaware of the idea of personality management or how important it is to the work environment. If I were to take just a rough guess off the top of my head, I'd say 90 to 95% of the businesses are totally unacquainted with the concept.
Right, and they're just winging it. They put an ad in the paper, and they take resumes, and they make appointments, and they've got the person sitting there across from them, or they're on their phone, and most of these people are making a decision from the gut.
Yeah, they're filling a position based on possibly work experience, which is always a good guideline, technical experience or education, and they're trying to decide whether this person will fit well in with their company by the impression that they get during the interview. That's the very worst time to form an impression from somebody, because a person almost hardly ever appears in the interview as they do on a day-to-day basis.
Right, they're acting.
Yeah.
They're auditioning.
Yeah, in fact, they're putting up what we call a facade.
Right.
It's a false front of what they feel the employer is looking for. So
okay.
That's what they provide.
Exactly. Are there a lot of other personality evaluation programs out there on the market?
Dozens, if not hundreds. If you go to the Internet and you enter personality test, personality analysis, personality evaluation, you get page after page after page of these programs.
Okay.
And if you go to the site and download a copy, even if they've got a copy that's downloadable, many don't. Mm-hmm. But if you try them out, you're going to spend probably a couple of hours of extreme frustration.
Okay. Well, I can say from my experience, I downloaded the software, I took it, and it probably took me only 5 or 6 minutes. I printed out the report, and I sat there and read it, just shaking my head. Yep, that's me. Yep. Mm-hmm. I go, this is pretty accurate. I was really impressed.
Good.
As I think anyone would be. How accurate is it, though? Can it be fooled?
Your experience really is the commonplace. First of all, to address your question of whether it can be fooled, of course, I wouldn't be being totally honest if I said it absolutely cannot be fooled. There are some brilliant people out there.
Right.
But I would say that in most of the cases, no, simply because from the very first I've designed the program to resist being fooled. Mm-hmm. About the only people that I know of that could accurately fool a program like this would be maybe a professional psychologist, a person who is well acquainted with psychology. But there's a drawback to it in that when an employer uses our system, they have a specific thing that they are looking for in the use of personality evaluation. Mm-hmm. Well, it's very hard to know what the employer is looking for. So if you try to fool our system, 9 out of 10 times you're going to accomplish exactly the opposite of what you're striving to accomplish. That's the way we've written the program. The program has a couple of fail-safe devices built into it to actually alert the interviewer when the program feels that somebody is trying to manipulate the report. It also, the report that it produces is very concise. Like in the case of your own report, it described who you are. Now, if that report came out with traits differently than you would ordinarily exhibit, that's going to come out during the interview process as well. Mm-hmm. So I've built in several fail-safe things in the program to prevent people from fooling it.
Okay.
But to answer your question as far as how accurate it is, your reaction to the program is by far the typical reaction that we get. People's jaws hit the floor. They just, read the thing in astonishment. They can't believe it is so accurate. In fact, people will read things in there that they never thought about before, and when they read it, it just astonishes them because they say, that's why I do that.
Right, but they learn something about themselves.
Yeah. Of course, often my clients will send me emails or respond when they take the report, even if they don't purchase the program. If they just have taken a report, an evaluation somewhere, they'll contact me and say, man, this is the most accurate system I've ever seen. I can't believe it. In evaluations that we've taken over the years, both from our customers' responses and also from feedback that we've received and calculated, our report has an accuracy in excess of 90%, and in most cases over 95%, which is astonishing in a field in which 50 to 70% is considered a well-acceptable norm.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So if someone wanted to know, well, how did you accomplish this? How is it so accurate? I mean, is there a science behind it? How many hours did you put into this? What are some reasons why it's so accurate without giving away any kind of trade secrets?
Well, I couldn't even begin to estimate how many hours we spent in making it accurate. But basically, and again, without giving out, trade secrets, because my competition would love to know how I do this.
Right.
What the system does, in just a general layman's concept, is that when somebody responds to the terms, the system looks for patterns in those responses. It looks for consistencies. It looks for inconsistencies. And basically, what it does is that it sorts this information in what we call general personality categories. Despite the fact that people are all individuals, which we all certainly are, most people fit into categories of personality. Those who don't, we often label as either insane or eccentric.
Exactly.
And those are few and far between. But the general person fits into general personality categories. So once the program determines which general personality category they fit into, then other areas can be examined to determine the finer points, the individual nuances of this person. So the point that all this information is combined together, and by the time everything is cross-referenced and double-checked, the program has a really good idea of who this person is. And since it does cross-reference things and double-check things, it tends to be extremely accurate.
Now let's talk about the other guys, the competition, the hundreds of them out there. Are they just throwing stuff together so they can have something to hustle?
There's such a wide number of answers to that. There are guys out there that just throw something together, to make a buck, just like in any other field.
Right.
There are some instances in which you have, again, what we call the computer technician syndrome. A guy is either a computer programmer or maybe he's a psychologist or a doctor in psychology, and they know the field really well, but what they don't know is how to translate that to computers and to the business field.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they know how to write a computer program real well, but they don't know how to relate to the everyday businessman.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they know the field of psychology really well and psychiatry really well, but they don't know how to translate that to the everyday business environment. So what you wind up with is a large number of these companies that have a product that simply does not work at all.
Right.
That has very questionable methods that result in a very questionable output of people saying, I'm not sure whether that's really me or not.
Exactly.
That doesn't really sound like me. To other products that actually do work, but they're kind of confusing to use or they take a long time to use. I remember seeing one product that it actually took an hour and a half for the respondent to fill out the form, and then produced a 150-page report. Well, what business that has 500 people applying for a job wants to go through that?
Exactly.
So there was obviously, although the report worked very well and it was very accurate, there was an obvious lack of understanding about the business market and what the human resource management market requires. So there are some, it's like any other field, there are some good products out there, there are some very bad products out there, but for the most part, just about most of everything I've seen on the market fails to meet the mark in one category or another. They're either too complex to use, they're too expensive, they consume too much time, or they don't work. All four of those things are things that the personality evaluation program totally overcomes.
Now, I know privacy is important to you, and I don't want you to give away any of your clients or anything, but can you give me some examples, maybe some cases over the years, just one or two, maybe a testimony or some success stories of how a company saved money using your system? Anything that sticks out in your mind, any customers or clients that have had a tremendous success with it?
Well, there's a couple of customers that come to mind. Of course, as my website indicates, all of my clients are guaranteed anonymity, all the way from email on up. We respect the privacy of our clients.
That's great.
So we never mention them by name, just as a matter of business policy. But I did have one particular client that wrote me an email, and he said that he had tried dozens of different personality programs over the years, and that he found ours by far to be easier to use, faster to use, and more accurate than anything else he'd ever used. So when we've got somebody who's already acquainted with the field, is already acquainted with the concept of personality management, who's tried other products, and is blown away by ours, that's exactly what I like to achieve.
That's great.
On a general basis, the basic bottom line dollar thing is that every time a company loses an employee, they spend about $2,500 or more rehiring someone else. You know, in the advertising and the interviewing process, in training this person to do the job, in acclimating them to the company, $2,500 is a minimum of what they will spend over the next year getting this person into the position. And that's for unskilled labor. For skilled labor, it can be much higher. So basically, when a business puts our product into their business, if they can save the turnover of just one employee over the next year, they've paid for our product many times over. I often have people that will write or call and tell me, man, your program saved us a bundle this last year. Best purchase we ever made. Yeah, our typical client tells us that 95% or better accuracy is what they achieve, which is, to be frank with you, that's far better than I ever expected or hoped to achieve. You know, I knew the system was accurate, and I knew that the tweaks and the upgrades that I'd done to it over the years improved the product. But when I started having clients regularly tell me that they thought it was 95% accurate, or in many cases 100% accurate, you know, when everybody else is doing 50, 60, 70% accuracy and 70 to 75, one thing that surprised me, I got a hold one time of a system that was one of the most widely known and widely used systems on the market.
Okay.
And they were exuberant that they had a 75% accuracy rate.
Right.
And that was considered high in the industry.
Yeah.
Well, me, being the nitpicker that I am, the way that struck me is that they fail 25% of the time. So when my clients were telling me that they were achieving 95% or greater accuracy, I was very pleased to hear that.
That's exciting. How about in the home? What value does it have in the home from your experience?
Well, there's two areas really in where it has value. One is helping people to know themselves better and to know their loved ones better. When you know who you are as a person, then you can figure out your strengths and how to build on them. You can find other areas in which maybe you want to work on that a little bit. Or if you have a personality trait or a thing that you do and you're not really sure why you do it, sometimes seeing in black and white the personality area that this comes from helps a person to cope with difficulties they're having in their life. And that's a very positive thing. That really encourages people. It says, hey, this is why I act this way, or here's why I lose my temper once in a while, or something like that. The other area it helps, of course, is in the job match area. Since every job does have a personality that works best, if they're thinking about getting a new job, or if they've got a current job and they want to know whether they actually fit that job or not, then they can, in one of the registered versions, they can perform a job analysis, which tells them what type of a personality that job requires, and often determine which job field would be best for them to work in.
All right, well, anyone listening to this probably is excited to know where they could at least download this, and maybe while they're listening to us talk, they can take the test and at least print it out. Okay, here's how you download a version of the software. In the description on this web page, under it, you'll see a place for your name and your email address. fill your name out and your email address, and you'll be taken to a download page where you can download this amazing free software. And it downloads pretty quickly?
Yes, downloads very fast, just a little bit over a megabyte.
Does it open up automatically, or do you have to go into that file and execute it?
Basically, once they download it, they're ordinarily under Windows, a little box comes up, says, do you want to open it or save it or whatever. Just open it up. It installs automatically to their system. Everything is just very straightforward.
Okay. And then when they open the software, what are they basically going to see?
Basically, they're going to be presented with a menu which will allow them to do a personality evaluation. When they go to that menu, there will be an option in the upper right-hand corner. It's a little button that says Print the Response Form. I always recommend that people do that, although they can take the response right there on the screen. If they print the response form and fill that out, then they've got that on hand as a record if they want to use it later.
Your response form is the report that evaluates you after you take the test.
No, actually, the response form is what they fill out prior to the report coming out. It's the 40 terms that they respond.
Okay, so they response form, and it shows you 40 terms, or 40 one-word or two-word terms, and it asks you to do what?
Basically, it asks you to respond to those on a level of 1 to 5. Is this term not like me at all, or is it very much like me? And then once they fill out all of those responses, feed it into the computer very quickly performs the analysis, prints out the report. Basically, on an average basis, from the time of their starting to fill out the form to the time of final printout, rarely takes over 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay, can you give us a sneak peek and give us 2 of the terms it'll ask us to evaluate?
Yeah, one term is outgoing.
Outgoing.
Are you an outgoing person? Another term is shy.
Okay.
Another one might be deadliner. Typically, are you a person that works better when you're under a deadline, or do you not work well when you're under a deadline? Well, under the term deadliner, that's where you would answer that.
Okay. Now, this free version has how many terms?
There's 40 terms on the freeware version.
40 terms on this freeware version. Now, let's say I'm impressed with the free one. Then where would I go from there? And what other products and services do you have after the free one, and how much do they cost, and what benefits will I get from a more extensive personality evaluation program? If you want to download a free copy of the PEP, you can go to drewsoftware.com. That's drewsoftware.com. This is the end of Part 1. Please continue to Part 2. Here's a tip. If you're listening to these audio recordings in MP3, here's a way where you can listen through the content twice as fast and still be able to absorb all the information. What you want to do is you want to go to a website and download a free trial of goldwave.com, GOLDWAVE.com. Now, this is an audio file editor, and one of the features on this editor is it allows you to play the audio recordings at any speed you want. So you can have it speed up to where it sounds like you're listening to the chipmunks where their voices are real high. But I do a lot of editing of audio recordings, and I find when I'm doing the editing, you're still able to listen to audio content about twice the speed of normal language. And it takes a little bit of practice, but you can fly through audio content. So if you like to learn by audio and you want to listen to content and you don't mind listening to the different higher pitch voice, it's a very effective way of getting through content twice as